You're watching the fourth quarter.
What an intro.
I feel like we had to after what happened yesterday.
Yeah, TBPN selling to OpenAI.
For a couple $100 million.
I know. And honestly, TBPN, definitely one of our inspirations. If you guys don't know what it is, Tech Business Podcast Network started off as Technology Brothers.
Yeah.
They brought a new type of coverage to technology that they hadn't seen before. Everyone had their sit-down podcast where we bring on, a guest every single show. They built a daily live-streamed broadcast of them covering all things tech, almost like CNBC, Bloomberg, and the Pat McAfee show combined.
No, I actually think it's more like SportsCenter came to the tech world and it made talking about tech really cool and not legacy media. That's the way I'd like to think about it.
100%, because they also brought like a new type of energy that sports has and tech didn't have.
Yeah, and I want to hopefully work the fourth quarter up to that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that type of coverage that happens in sports, I feel like doesn't happen for the business of sports, which is kind of why we want to bring that element and that energy from TBPN here. So obviously this is a pre-recorded show and it's weekly, but we're excited to ramp up and get to the point where we're going live every single day.
Yeah, that's the goal. And the fact that they sold to OpenAI for a couple $100 million in 17 months is shocking.
Yeah.
They were moving at light speed, right?
I know.
That's pretty cool.
17 months, like literally a year and a half. I remember watching them in February of last year.
You were early.
I was early on. I was like telling you about it. I was like, yo, this is pretty awesome. Like maybe the newsletter evolves into a podcast or like a full live stream.
Yeah, and you're right. And I guess Sam Altman and OpenAI thought it was worth buying them for a bag. So
I know.
Congrats to the team. Big inspiration for us and to a lot of people in the new media space. Good day to be building a new media, that's for sure.
Yeah. It seems like they're able to get acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Whew. Enough glaze. Let's get into the show.
So, what are we talking about today, Sid?
Lot on our lineup, but we have to talk about team and league business news first because the NFL just launched a flag football league. They had a stacked roster of investors: Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Larry Fitzgerald, Larry Fitz, among many other athletes as well. Institutional investors also came in, like Sixth Street, Silver Lake, Apex Capital, Project Level, just to name a few. Lot to talk about. They raised roughly $200 million. We'll break that all down shortly. Then we're moving into Project B, the new F1 for basketball league that has been rumored to be involved with longtime business partner of LeBron James, Maverick Carter.
Yeah. I mean, we had been talking about this for a while. There was rumors of it last year. We wrote an article about it and how that could actually be a potential competitor to the NBA. Now there's just so much basketball action happening internationally with the NBA Europe, EuroLeague just raising for $3 billion. So I can't wait to talk about that one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. And moving forward, this could have easily been above these other two that we just mentioned, but we have to cover technology investment space. Whoop, the screen-free wearable fitness tracker and health coach, just raised $575 million at a $10 billion valuation.
$10 billion. Wow.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I got mine on right now. You're not wearing yours for some
reason.
reason.
No, I'm getting a new one shipped. Mine's like pretty much broken.
I've
had it for such a long time. So it's time for me to get the new one and actually get the new styles. I think I got the
5 or the 4.0.
I got the 4.0, but I think it's like silicon is like
silicon
is like the style.
Material?
It's like a new material style. So I'm excited when that comes in. Definitely got to use the new features, and I have a lot of takes on Whoop as well. I know we've talked about it before the show.
So they're innovating a bunch, and specifically with this raise, there was an announcement that came out that Kevin Durant was an early investor, and his investment is up 81 times.
Yeah,
his original amount. That's so
also
wild.
Shows how prolific of an investor Kevin Durant is in the early stage space.
That's a completely separate conversation we could talk about for hours. And then moving on to new fund announcements. 2 new funds entered the sports investment world. I actually don't think it's a joke anymore. We used to joke that every week new sports funds would be coming out.
But it's literally every week.
It's the truth now. So more on that. One Team Partners, the athlete licensing company, announced a new $250 million venture fund called EnOne Ventures. We'll break that down, their thesis, what was behind it, who's behind it. And the second fund is 13-year NFL vet Malcolm Jenkins' $500 million fund focused on sports and real estate investing.
Yeah, Pleasant Rock.
That's a cool name.
I think it's a really cool name.
It's like Pleasant/Rock.
Yeah. Very, very nuanced. I think Malcolm Jenkins is one of the most prolific investors that's also an athlete, legend for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think it's just the continuous next step where athletes are just making move after move and they're hitting success after success.
Yeah, completely agree. And then we'll have to go on to the latest in emerging leagues. Pro Paddle League just raised $15 million in funding by in their Series A, led by Charlotte Hornets owner. That's another one we're gonna have to talk about. We were there in person for the City
Cup finals. Yeah, this was last November, I believe. Last October, November. It was my first time actually ever watching paddle live.
Same.
And it was pretty dope.
Yeah. I actually think the pushback paddle gets is that it's not a fun sport to watch live. I completely disagree. There was a lot of
action, yeah. Honestly, like extremely athletic too. Like I was seeing these people just running outside of the court, outside of the glass court, hitting the ball outside. Like it's stuff that you just wouldn't be able to see, or action you would be able to see in any other sport.
I agree. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about another sports fund, Synergy Sports Capital, $150 million fund. But guess what? We predicted it. We've been on a hot streak of predicting things. They just made a move to acquire a stake in League One Volleyball's Salt Lake City team.
Yeah, I think they're owning it.
They're owning it outright. Crazy. And then transitioning into interesting partnership news, OpenAI just didn't make the headlines in buying TBPN this week. They also made it in sports. They struck two interesting deals, one with the San Antonio Spurs and one with ticket marketplace giant SeatGeek.
Yeah, I have a lot of takes on this because I think that more, foundation labs are going to get involved in the sports space. It just is the natural progression. And the SeatGeek partnership itself too, there's a lot of implications when it comes to collecting data, fan experience, and at the same time, how are the teams and leagues going to get involved in this? I
agree. And then we'll cap it with what your favorite topic is probably this week. KSI, mega internet influencer.
My favorite YouTuber growing up.
Really?
I was a big FIFA head.
Okay.
So he was like one of the first. He had this whole thing, Race to Division 1, where he was just like, this guy's full of energy, playing old FIFA games way back when. That was one of my favorite things to just like pass time and watch.
So he just struck a deal with Dagenham and Redbridge, a 6-tier European football club that might be getting the same treatment that Ryan Reynolds did to Wrexham.
Yeah, he bought a minority stake, doesn't fully own it, but is highly involved in the operations now.
And distribution to new audiences, right?
Because he just streamed one of their games live this past Saturday. And it went nuclear. It had like 344,000 plus viewers that were live streaming, watching
That's insane.
Insane, yeah.
And that would have never happened to that club before, right?
Yeah. I have a lot of takes on this.
We'll get into it
because I think this, deserves its own, Well,
let's start from the top and dive into the NFL's Flag Football League. The NFL has officially partnered with Tomorrow Sports to build and operate a new professional flag football league for both men and women. The league was announced just a few days ago on March 30th, and it's being positioned as the missing top tier in the sports pathway for youth, high school, college, Olympics, and now pro for flag football. The NFL is clearly trying to capitalize on flag football's surge ahead of the 2028 Olympics. That's what I think. Fanatics just also had the Flag Football Classic, right? So there's a wave of interest that's being surrounded around flag football. I think the NFL is timing this pretty interestingly. But just to give you some more context on kind of the financial situation of this league, the league is backed by all 32 teams in the NFL through 32 Equity, which is the league office's strategic investment arm, and it's operated by Tomorrow Sports. And Tomorrow Sports is the company that's co-founded by Mike McCarley and Tiger Woods.
Rory McIlroy is also involved as well. They're the ones who run TGL.
TGL, that's right, exactly. So you have the name and stamp of approval from the largest governing body in all of football in the world, with a new kind of emerging sports tech-infused sports operator.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
Very interesting. I think it makes sense because Tomorrow Sports had a great relationship with PGA, and that's how they've been able to make TGL such a success. I think you use the same model with the NFL and make sure that professional flag football is something that people can watch. Like, I think that's something that they need to figure out.
Yeah, I agree. And specifically around their finances, they raised a total of $192 million. And
that's a lot of money. So a lot of capital.
So this is how they split it. 32 million came from the league, like I just said, right? And they raised 160 million from outside capital. So the cap table was stacked, like I mentioned, with a bunch of athletes: Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Larry Fitzgerald, Serena Williams, just to name a few. But then it was also stacked on the institutional investor side. So the lead institutional investors reportedly each put in about $15 million. And that list included Ariel Investments Project Level, which we've talked about consistently over the last couple of weeks. Bessemer Venture Partners, which has been a venture fund that's been continually doing investments in sports.
They invested in Unrivaled, I believe. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And Josiah's Blue Pool Capital, Dynasty Equity, Silver Lake, and Sixth Street. And then there was a boatload of venture funds and growth equity funds that also participated in this.
So why do you think these institutional investors are deploying so much capital in flag football out of all sports, right? This is like something that I was seeing on my timeline where I was seeing like I used to be an investment banker. I follow some of these fin twits and they're all like hating on it. Like, why are all these private equity firms that have 20% returns that they need to guarantee for their LPs investing in flag football? Do you have any takes on this? Or
look, like long term, it'll be hard to tell where flag football is going to go. But the biggest signal is that the NFL league is behind it. The league office is behind it. They're the ones endorsing this and growing the league. I think the way that they're also looking at this is a huge pipeline of youth to pro in this. So you're kind of building, it's not just the league, it's kind of like the infrastructure that comes with this. And I know you have an interesting point on the analogy between this league and League One volleyball.
Yeah. So the way that I see this is like you have to look at the actual macro tailwinds around flag football. So one thing this is actually from NFL's press release directly, around 4.1 million youth play flag football in the U.S. alone, which has been a 50% increase since 2020. It's now offered at the high school level in 39 states, so it's considered a varsity sport in a lot of different high schools. They're now building out that infrastructure in the college level. We saw a partnership between the Big 12 and the NFL early on where they were building flag football infrastructure within their schools. Now there's recent reports, it's actually happened this week, where the Big 12 is now considering making women's flag football a varsity sport. So overall,
at the collegiate level.
That's so crazy. Like you're building out infrastructure from the youth and to college, which is a great tailwind for a professional league because now a lot of families are saying, hey, I want to have my kid, especially girls who are much more interested. I saw a crazy stat actually where with the number of, and this is straight a quote, with the number of young women playing on their high school teams increasing by nearly 60% from 2024 to 2025, straight from NFL's press release again, a lot of young girls are getting involved in flag football, right? And so that's also a major tailwind. And now there's going to be a professional league for them waiting at the top because of this initiative that the NFL and Tamar Sports are building. And that's what League One Volleyball did, right?
Yeah.
They rolled up a bunch of volleyball camps, tournaments, events across the U.S.
So you're saying that there's an opportunity at the youth level that flag football is kind of fragmented right now, and that this is an opportunity to either private equity roll it up as a part of this big league and create like a verticalized pipeline, or like how are you like talk me through that?
Yeah. So League One Volleyball is very interesting because they launched the league after they had built the infrastructure. So what they did was they essentially developed the pipeline. So they went and invested in a lot of these different centers, and these are cash flowing machines.
Centers as in volleyball arenas,
volleyball,
like physical volleyball.
Yeah, like facilities, right, dedicated for youth athletes, right, and you're developing them as well. Because if you really think about it, right, like some of our high school, for example, didn't have that robust of a volleyball program.
You just play on the basketball court.
I
feel like most are like that.
But most are like that. But that's why if you're really thinking about it from the collegiate level, like I want to play D1, you would go to a center like this where there's, specific coaches that have that expertise to develop youth talent. And so that's what League One Volleyball was focused on at first. Once they built the infrastructure and generated that pipeline, then they're like, hey, it's time to launch a professional league because it already really existed in the collegiate level. They just needed that, next step. And League One Volleyball has been doing a great job. They have a lot of exposure now, and people are interested in buying franchises within the league. I think the NFL could have a similar approach, but kind of the opposite of how League One Volleyball did it. You build out the professional league first, so then it encourages potential youth programs, centers as well. We're seeing this with Unrivaled Sports too. Blitzer and Harris's youth sports arm.
Yep.
They're investing a lot in flag football. I could see the NFL and Tomorrow Sports doing that too, and teaming up with Unrivaled, building out that infrastructure. And I think that's where it really turns into generating returns for a lot of these institutional investors that got involved.
I completely agree here. I think also something that most people are maybe not talking about, and you can kind of like extrapolate this out, maybe we're just getting a little too creative here, is that the football as a whole, American football, I think is at a structural disadvantage than the other big four sports in the U.S.
Why do you think so?
So hockey is an international sport. Like, it's a winter sport. It's played at in a lot of the countries that have that kind of seasonality and kind of weather and climate. It's an Olympic sport already.
Yeah.
Right. Basketball. Obviously, basketball is huge, wildly global. Right. And same thing with baseball. Japan is a huge market for baseball.
The World Baseball Classic was an absolute hit.
Huge,
too.
Right? Caribbean, there's obviously South America is a huge pipeline, and Central America are a huge pipeline for talent into the MLB, right? That's not a problem that baseball and the MLB faces. But American football, on the other hand, yes, there's been some globalization of it, but it's still very closely correlated with the American dynamism, cultural kind of political is not the right word, but with the country itself.
Yeah, I think it is America's sport right now.
It is.
Like,
it is. Right? But it also comes with a bunch of infrastructure. You have helmets, you have pads, you need field goal posts.
Stadiums are just ginormous.
Like
$100 billion projects.
Right? 100-yard, like they're huge, right? So I think this is a very interesting way for the NFL to actually become global. Flag football is already in the 2028 Olympics. It's just flags, really, right? And
yeah.
a shorter field and no real infrastructure outside of that. So I think it's really smart and an interesting chess piece that is in the favor, and chess move that's in the favor of the NFL as they're thinking about globalizing here.
What I'm really excited to see is what the international talent's going to look like for flag football. Because if it is really good, that's such a great tailwind for this professional flag football league. One thing that we were talking about is, what if professional flag football league could just have not only games internationally, maybe they have franchises internationally. That would completely change the game. You're now able to build youth infrastructure in other countries as well. I don't know what the flag football, my guess is that your typical Olympic juggernauts, for example, China, I think China is going to be really good at this. Right.
You think so?
I think a country like Germany is going to be pretty good at this. And then it's like, hey, can we start building out the youth infrastructure there and have the NFL Tomorrow Sports Flag Football League lead the charge?
That's super, super interesting, actually. They haven't announced any exact launch date yet, or the number of teams, or their strategy surrounding all of this. But reports have said it'll be portable, tech forward, and probably a travel type venue model rather than like a traditional city by city rollout. But we'll see. Things could be changing. There seems to be a lot of money and real players backing this. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, we'll keep tabs on just like what the developments happen as it rolls out into varsity sports and colleges. We're going to look into it and just see like how the reactions are. I think a big litmus test was Fanatics Flag Football Classic, which I think was a success given that they literally had like 3-4 weeks to pivot from Riyadh to LA. And I thought it was great.
I mean, they had Speed, they had iShowSpeed, Logan Paul. They had like legit influencers in it too that were very competitive. And it looked, if you were watching the highlights, which I watched the highlights on YouTube after, they had legit Fox commentary, right? Greg Olsen was on there commentating. Tom Brady was playing, Jalen Hurts, all these NFL athletes, Saquon Barkley. It looked like they were actually trying. It didn't look like, and they were having fun too. It was a fun watch. Even though the stadium didn't fill up because of the moving from Riyadh to LA, it was super interesting, I think.
And those are going to be the ambassadors for this new flag football league, which is another, good thing that they have.
I agree. But moving on to Project B, we have to talk about this new ambitious basketball startup that the world is about to experience because it's supposedly launching in November of 2026, so this year. And for those of you that haven't heard of it, think of it as an F1 for basketball. So it's a concept where it's a new league, basketball league concept where there's global touring. It's an event style, stops city by city, premium salaries, and they have both men's and women's. So Project B has already announced Tokyo and Valencia as stops in their 2026 to 2027 calendar, and AP reported that the league plans for both, like I just mentioned, men's and women's tournaments, each with 66 players split across 6 teams. Just to give you some more context, which I know you know because we wrote about this literally the day it was announced and kind of hit the press about a year ago. The original financial vision was pretty enormous. Bloomberg and ESPN both reported in January 2025 that the investors tied to this concept were seeking to raise $5 billion. Isn't that ridiculous?
$5 billion capital or valuation?
No, capital.
Capital is crazy.
Capital.
Wow.
So they thought this new international basketball league could rival kind of the existing system. And back then, there wasn't talks of NBA Europe. There really wasn't talks
I think it was supposed to be like a full-blown league, not only just like an F1 for basketball.
I agree. And the more recent reports have suggested that the Project B has not publicly disclosed the amount that they've raised, but it has taken a bunch of strategics on as investors. So it's interesting. Just to give you some more context on who's involved, there's major women's stars like Sophie Cunningham, Alyssa Thomas, Nneka Ogwumike. I think that's how you pronounce her name.
I think so. I don't know if you said it right, but we got to roll with it.
Okay.
Wait, is it Nneka Ogwumike?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I think it is.
I was pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay, all right. Plus many others, and the women's league is supposed to start in November of this year, so they're launching, dude. I'm very excited to see what happens there. But the story is, what we said up top, is that the longtime business partner of LeBron James, Maverick Carter, is supposedly tied to this project in some capacity, even though the exact role and his affiliation isn't exactly clear.
Yeah, so I wrote about this it's almost a year and a half ago now.
It's been more than a year.
Yeah, Project B has been floated around for a while, and when it first broke on Bloomberg, or when Bloomberg first reported on this, Maverick Carter was actually the one that was like reported to be spearheading the project, right? That's all the information that was really provided. It was essentially what the whole story was like. Maverick Carter and LeBron James are launching a rival basketball league to the NBA. Like that was kind of like the extrapolation that people were trying to make. Obviously, that's not the case. But then Maverick Carter came out and said, hey, I'm not that involved with Project B much at all. But now it's confirmed that he is actually very much involved. I believe he's on the board as well and is an advisor.
Yep.
And I think it makes sense to have someone like Maverick Carter in the mix, right? The leadership of Project B, guys like Grady Burnett, who I believe is a co-founder and co-CEO, his background is in tech, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I do think that's a good angle to have. You want to get a guy like Mav Carter who can provide some sort of insight on how do you build out a potential men's league, right? He's got a lot of connections with the NBA, not only through LeBron, but a lot of other players that he's done business with. I think it's a great partnership to have and a great advisor to have. And another cool thing about this too is they're actually working with Jokic's agent, Misko Raznatovic. Man, I'm going to call him just Misko. All right, Misko. So Jokic's agent, Misko, he's very much tapped into the European basketball ecosystem. Yeah. Also in the Eastern European side too, where basketball is just extremely big there, right? And it's really resonates, especially in Serbia and Belgrade, etc. Now, he's involved. And what's funny enough, actually in 2025, July of 2025, so off season for the Lakers, LeBron and Mav Carter and Risco were out in Europe on a boat. There was an Instagram picture that went viral there. And the caption was, and this is Misko posting, the summer of 2025 is the perfect time to make big plans for the fall of 2026. So it was already teased about a year ago that they're all going to get involved with some sort of project, and it's clearly Project B.
That's really wild. How'd you even snipe that? Where they posted on Instagram?
So he posted on Instagram in 2025. I remember seeing this and I was like, wait, that's super interesting because I've been, super tapped in with Project B. But then Mav Carter was saying that he wasn't really that involved, but now it's confirmed that he is. Now, we have another take about this, and you were talking about this as well. Magic Johnson just came out and said that he's interested in buying the Las Vegas franchise that's coming out in the NBA.
Yeah.
There was rumors that LeBron would be interested too, but he shut down those rumors. So maybe after those rumors shut down, maybe the franchise price was too high of $7 to $10 billion, or LeBron wants to continue to keep playing the NBA, doesn't have his sights on an NBA franchise, is when Mav Carter and those discussions that were happening with Project B reemerged.
Yeah, so the press timeline was 2 weeks ago. We covered on this show that Magic Johnson was linked to a Las Vegas NBA expansion team, like we just said. And then randomly, a week later, it seemed like a random thing to publish, but some of the sports publications picked this up, that LeBron is not interested in the NBA Vegas franchise, which I was like, that's kind of random to, post. And then we saw this news that now Maverick Carter is involved in helping her out with Project B. So we'll see what happens. It looks like I don't know if LeBron is involved in this project, but it could be an interesting way for Maverick Carter. He was deciding I don't know if he's thinking about this, but if he had both of these opportunities on the table, he's deciding between, they're saying it's going to be roughly the NBA expansion fee for the Las Vegas team, if it goes through, is $7 to $10 billion. Can this new league, Project B, be at, potentially create higher upside than,
or like higher returns?
Yeah,
because I mean, LeBron is a billionaire. Don't get me wrong, like extremely rich, but like $7 to $10 billion is an insane price tag.
Yeah.
You have to build out a major investor consortium. Can you really actually get the returns that you'd want? Like Mav Carter, he's a businessman at heart, right? He's looking at those returns, like how much value can we get from this? I think Project B is more of like a startup. You're investing in a startup. There's real opportunity, real potential, but at the same time, there's real risk because the Europe landscape is getting so crowded now. EuroLeague is raising a $3 billion valuation.
Yep.
Their new CEO, Chus Bueno, was formerly working at the NBA. They're now trying to broker a deal with NBA Europe, which is now emerging. We're looking at billion-dollar franchise tags for some of these cities that are about to have a franchise. And could NBA Europe be extremely big if they team up with EuroLeague as well? Now Project B has to compete with these new institutions. Yeah, they're playing in Valencia and Tokyo, which are different markets that NBA Europe might not be playing in. They're playing for bigger cities and specifically in Europe, while Project B has exposure to Asia. It's tough. You don't really know what's going to happen and where talent's going to go where, right? Men's basketball, Project B, there was reports that saying that they're eyeing NBA players, but it's going to coincide with the NBA season. So how are you going to get players from the NBA to join Project B? They're looking at maybe vets, guys like Russell Westbrook, for example, who's at the tail end of his career, but obviously great player, legend, and may be interested in getting a fat bag and then also getting that international exposure as well. So we'll see if it works. There's just a lot of competition now.
Yeah, with NBA Europe, with EuroLeague, with FIBA, it just seems like there's so much happening. I don't know if this gets sidelined. I don't know, will they bring in, there was tensions that we covered before with NBA Europe and EuroLeague. Now it seems like they're trying to bring them into the fold.
Yeah.
Is now this Project B, new venture, is this initiative going to be brought into this mix?
Can they all happen together and everyone become successful? I don't know if that's possible.
I kind of agree with you.
Hunch.
Yeah, I
don't
agree
know
with
if
you.
it's everything can be a success.
I agree with you. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's cool for basketball and cool for basketball fans. And more importantly, I just think it's...
The more content, the better.
Yeah, and it's new models of basketball, right?
It leads to innovation. That's exactly what sports needs.
I agree. And speaking on that thread of LeBron's investments, he was an early adopter and I believe investor in Whoop, correct?
Yeah, he actually invested in his most recent round too.
As well. So this could have been the headline like I mentioned up from the top. Whoop just raised a gargantuan $575 million at a $10.1 billion valuation. I'm not sure who doesn't need Whoop or who doesn't know about Whoop. We kind of already explained it at the top. Fitness tracker. They've done way more than now fitness tracking. They're expanded into super interesting consumer products in the health and wellness side. So they raised a Series G. How many more can you get?
At some point they're going to have to IPO.
The IPO, right? And that's a question I have for you later. But the round was led by Collaborative Fund and included a notable mix of backers, including Qatar's Investment Authority, Mubadala, which is Abu Dhabi sovereign investment sovereign wealth fund 2.0, Abbott, Mayo Clinic, plus a bunch of athletes and celebrities, including LeBron, like we just said, Cristiano Ronaldo, Rory McIlroy, and more. So Whoop now has more than 2.5 million paying members. So it's
including us.
Yeah. And I actually like it. It's actually the first thing I check in the morning.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah, I want to see my sleep score.
Yeah.
And as of recent, it's been kind of bad. I'm not going to lie.
The sleep score, my favorite is the recovery score because it just gets the mix of like, okay, honestly, I'm resonating with this.
That's true.
And then like you kind of just test out throughout the day, okay, based on my diet, what I'm doing, how much I'm getting sleep, how is this affecting my consistent recovery score? That's probably my favorite stat. And strain as well. Because I immediately look at that while I'm working out.
Yeah, I agree. And they ended 2025 with $1.1 billion in bookings, in a booking run rate, and grew bookings 103% year over year in 2025.
Wow.
Which is insane.
That's a really fast growth rate, yeah.
Huge, right? And they were also cash flow positive last year. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they have a very strong subscription model. Typically, if you were to go and get a health tracking device, originally like the Apple Watch, right? It's just a one-time payment. Here, you have a subscription model. And a lot of people are willing to pay for it given the data insights that they continually provide, and it's accelerated, right? It's not just the recovery score now. Now something that I look at and I tease you about is the what's like the life score. It's like what your biological age or something like that. Yeah. So I'm actually now younger than my current age, which
honestly a huge flex. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, right? I don't even know how that's possible because Sid's been clowning me about drinking Celsiuses every day. Honestly, I got to hop off the energy drinks at some point, but
they're not that good for you, man.
Yeah, but for some reason, I'm de-aging it with it.
Maybe
it's the real biohack is just drinking a ton of caffeine.
Maybe your sleep score is just really high and you're getting good sleep.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, regardless, Whoop is doing a bunch of things in addition with this raise. One, I thought it was cool that Middle Eastern capital that has been coming into sports has also entered the health and wellness space, specifically through Whoop and this investment.
So I follow the CEO, Will, on Instagram just because, I mean, he's doing a bunch of cool stuff, hanging out with athletes, brokering deals. And he was actually in the Middle East, and he was posting a lot about it, going and meeting, leadership in Saudi Arabia, Qatar. This was a couple of months ago, so it seems like that was meant for the fundraise.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And they're expanding past just a wrist strap into a broader portfolio and health and wellness stack with AI coaching, accessories and apparel, and biomarker and lab data integrations, which is cool. So I'm excited to see what else they'd come out with. They did like a shirt or like an underwear that tracked you.
No, that already exists actually.
What?
Yeah, so I was going on the Whoop store.
That exists, or they're coming out with that?
No, it exists. Like you can buy
and
undergarments.
It tracks.
Yeah, because you already have the subscription, right? So like it literally has a tracker in your undergarments if you don't want to wear something on your wrist.
So
maybe you're a big watch guy,
so it's
watch and bracelet guy, and you don't want to wear the Whoop.
So it replaces the wrist. It's not like a net new tracker for you that picks up on other signals, right?
So I didn't look that deep into it because I was like, look, I don't need.
We should buy it and test it for
that track my data right now. But maybe that's the next step. It's like, hey, one, Whoop is just fashionable to begin with, right? I think they just want to have it's athletics. It's like, why not just get into the fashion and retail space there anyways? But I think it's the right step. I want to talk a lot about building out that ecosystem because that was the natural next step that they needed to go. You're seeing the wellness space, innovate year after year. We were talking about how big the market's become. It's now a $2.1 trillion market, growing 8% year over year. At the same time, new products are continually entering the market, especially from a preventative healthcare point of view. We're looking at products like Function Health, Superpower, that really care about blood testing and making sure you're able to get your bio data. That's extremely important for how what food that you eat every day, what supplements you're taking, right? At the same time, you're seeing GLP-1s skyrocket. And so Whoop has to go from just a data tracking to, hey, we're not only collecting your data, we're analyzing your data, and we're providing feedback on that data as well. So I was looking into this. They actually have a partnership with OpenAI. So on Whoop, you can go and you can talk to a chat. It originally was ChatGPT 4, now it's ChatGPT 5.1 that's integrated. And so now I can say, hey, based on my strain, based on my recovery score, etc. Like, what would you recommend from a training regimen wise, from an exercise point of view, doing, this, right? Let's say it's also focused on like a swimming and running regimen. They can now provide information and insights based on all the data that they're collecting. But more data is better. That's why they're going into, blood testing, right? You can now go on Whoop, and through a partnership with Quest Diagnostics, you can now say, hey, like I want to get my testosterone tested, or my vitamin D, right? Like all these important biomarkers, you can now go through Whoop. And so it's essentially building like a full-blown healthcare hub. And I think that's kind of the next step. It keeps you ingrained, keeps you situated, and it's providing real-time recommendations. That is what I see Whoop going forward, and that's going to be their pitch to the retail investors when they eventually IPO.
I think they're going to IPO eventually.
Yeah.
It just seems like such a value add to society and to people that obviously that's not the only reason companies go public, but it seems like the traction they're on, that it would be a very interesting company that the public would want to be invested in as well.
Yeah, and I think when they IPO, right, you raise a lot of capital. There's going to be a lot of M&A activity. What if they go and buy a function health or a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Like they can position themselves to do that. And I think there'll be like 2 or 3 like major juggernauts in the preventative healthcare space, and it all came from wearables, right? It'll be like Aura. Aura's at like an $11 billion valuation right now. Whoop is like about to get there, right? So you'll see these you'll see a duopoly, I think, long term, and those will be the 2 major like public players in the space.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a bunch of other cool stuff, right? Superhuman is another one. There's Cutis Ring that we've covered a while ago. I think there's now health tracking accessories and jewelry that you can wear. I think there will be many different players, but to your point, who knows? Maybe it's just like a big M&A play and it's just 2 people.
Yeah, just user acquisition. You just get like the hub. So one thing that I was scared about when we were talking about Whoop internally, just like the future of smart wearables that are tracking health data, I was a little bit worried about OpenAI because they launched ChatGPT Health. We discussed this where, people are uploading their medical records and asking a chatbot for, recommendations on what they should be doing, which is smart in my opinion because a lot of it is connected with healthcare providers. So it's just an extension of your primary care doctor, but now it's deeply integrated within your data. And I thought that was actually a potential competitor to Whoop, but they haven't released their device that they've been, hinting and teasing for a while now. And I think at some point in time, just Whoop becomes such a strong brand and has powerful brand affinity with the entire, consumer base that's very interested on being, healthy and like going into athletics, right? You have all these athletes who are invested. They're actively campaigning for, their success and for their fans to wear Whoop. I think at some point in time, you see just that collaboration between OpenAI and Whoop becoming stronger rather than OpenAI being a competitor to Whoop.
And just to close out this topic, I just thought it was really cool. I also mentioned this at the top, but Sportico reported that Kevin Durant invested in Whoop in 2017 and then added that position in 2020 and has not sold since. And estimates say that he came in to Whoop at a roughly $125 million valuation, and now with this recent raise, it's at $10.1 billion, and that position has 81x'd. Isn't that ridiculous?
That's crazy. And I could see Whoop becoming like a $50 billion company, honestly. I know that sounds pretty insane to say right now, but like I think KD just got to stick it out till they IPO. Like he's about to make a bag off this.
He has his portfolio too is insane, right? Coinbase. Was he in Robinhood too?
I believe he was in Robinhood.
Yeah.
He was making a ton of business moves when he was playing at Golden State, right? Like, which makes sense.
Must be a great
part
team
of Silicon
to
Valley.
for.
Yeah. Him and Rich were out here just throwing lobs to each other, and it just like worked out.
That's awesome. Well, moving on to new funds, we have to talk about the new funds that were announced this week. Somehow every week there's not just one, but multiple funds that are being announced, right? So the first is EnOne Ventures, a new sports-focused investment fund launched by One Team Partners and Entrust Global. The fund is targeting $250 million and plans to invest in early and growth stage businesses in the sports space. Supposedly, they've committed $77 million in commitments. They secured $77 million in commitments already from investors like Fanatics, a few family offices, and then an undisclosed Southeast Asian sovereign wealth fund, which is interesting. And they've already made 2 investments. So Ari Emanuel's Mari, which you were telling me about, they're the events business that Ari Emanuel, the GOAT of entertainment probably, has started, and The Realist, which is a memorabilia authenticator company. So they're still active. They have a target of 250. They're working their way up to it. I think it's really interesting. For those of you that don't know what One Team Partners is, it's a business arm for basically the players' associations, and it's collecting athlete group rights and then commercializing them and packaging them and monetizing them. So through licenses, brand deals, media, and now investing, which is interesting. And then for more context, Entrust, which is the other partner in this fund, Entrust Global is a global institutional investment vehicle with $17 billion in assets and has prior sports exposure in Formula One and IPL teams. But this is the first time that they're part of a dedicated sports investment fund. So I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so I got a few takes on this. This is the classic talent agency move that you got to make, right?
You think every other agency should have venture funds like this?
Yeah, I mean, CAA did this, right, with Connect Ventures. Now it's spun off. It's basically its own fund. Honestly, similar to what this is going to look like. You have UTA with UTA Ventures, right? I believe Endeavor has some sort of investment capability.
It's like Talent Ventures or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But pretty much it makes sense because you're essentially want to invest in an ecosystem that at some point in time can bring deal flow for all of your clients. Yeah. And I think this is kind of the situation that they want to put together. Athletes are getting much more involved in bigger business, and you're bringing sponsorships and brands to these athletes as well. But what about these newer brands, these newer companies, these newer products that athletes can get integrated into?
Yeah.
It's a great partnership to have, not only because you're providing capital to these startups or to these major companies, or to these major, growth stage companies. I would consider Mari not really a startup, more of a growth stage company. But at the same time, they can provide so much value to your clients as well. And so I think that there's a mutually beneficial relationship here that you get with a talent agency becoming an investor as well. And I was also looking into this too. One Team Partners has previously been investors as well, but they did it through SPVs.
Right.
They invested in Fanatics Collectibles, Hyperice, Overtime. I mean, there's something in common with all three of them. All three of them can bring deal flow and value and cash to all their clients that are the players and within the Players Association as well. Fanatics Collectibles obviously is working with the Players Associations. Hyperice is definitely doing deals with athletes. And Overtime, I mean, come on, it's Overtime. They're obviously going to be brokering as many partnerships as they can.
I completely agree with you on that one as well. I mean, very cool companies in that portfolio, but we can't just talk about that fund. There was a second fund that was announced this week that was in sports, and somehow this one is even bigger, 2 times the size that they're targeting. So former New Orleans Saints and Eagles player Malcolm Jenkins has launched Pleasant Rock, a new investment and development platform at the intersection of sports and real estate. Pleasant Rock says it already has more than $200 million in active deployments and pipeline, but is targeting $500 million in total investments by 2028. Jenkins co-founded the firm with Brian Hines, who has a background at UBS and JP Morgan. So traditional athlete partners with financier seems to be the right playbook.
Right.
And they want to combine institutional real estate expertise with athlete-driven access and influence and focus on investing in sports-adjacent properties like teams, emerging leagues, and sports tech. Honestly, another one of these funds that seems to have the exact same focus investment areas.
Yeah, so it seems like Malcolm Jenkins is what we would consider a prolific investor, an athlete that was very much involved in off-field investments while he was an athlete and after he retired. So I was looking through his current portfolio, and it's pretty epic. So he has Malcolm Incorporated, houses all of his ventures formed in 2021, 6 divisions. One is Broad Street Ventures. Have you heard of Broad Street Ventures before?
I've not heard of Broad Street Ventures.
So Broad Street Ventures, it's a $10 million VC fund launched in 2020, backed entirely by African-American NFL players. So Devin McCourty, the McCourty brothers, Rodney McLeod, Duran Harmon, and others. Their portfolio is actually, you're gonna be like,
tell
wow.
me about it.
Portfolio includes Airbnb, Epic Games, SpaceX, Turo, Instacart, Therabody, Dapper Labs, Noble. I mean, literally like hit after a hit after a hit. So that's just from the early stage space, right? He has his own company called Disrupt Foods, I think he has a major stake in them. Multi-unit franchise operator. They operate Papa John's, Wingstop locations all across the Northeast. So franchise model. Very smart. We talked to a lot of athletes back when we were at Ramp headquarters for Athlete Biz Week
last week.
And one thing that we've noticed is that athletes are very, very savvy at roll-up strategies when it comes to franchises and real estate as well. So good, classic type of asset to have in his portfolio. Now he's obviously got Pleasant Rock, which I think has some form of index on sports real estate as well, right? So you're going to have that adjacent properties around these, stadiums and these mega projects, these multi-billion-dollar projects that are currently happening. We're seeing this with the Commanders. We're seeing this with the Bears, right? Kansas City's about to move their new stadium. They're going to be able to build a lot of real estate around it. Now you have a firm like Pleasant Rock that's going to provide capital, maybe build some entertainment venues around these stadiums as well. He also has a minority ownership stake in Burnley FC, which is an English football club. I believe that's currently in the Premier League as well. So definitely one of the most prolific investors. It makes sense for him to double down on this, raise a massive fund, and really just go all in on this initiative.
I agree. It's very similar to Synergy Sports Capital, which we talked about a few weeks ago, and which we'll talk about in just a second. But it seems that they have real estate background, sport athlete background. They're focused on very similar things as well. Just seems to be a little smaller fund, or Synergy Sports Capital seems to be a little smaller fund. But it's interesting. The space is it's
heating up. Yeah.
It's getting really active. I'm sure they're gonna start competing for deals if they're not already.
Yeah. So this is what I was thinking about, and I wanted to ask you this is. Do you think this market can take the rate of new funds that are announcing and coming into the ecosystem? Like, I've actually never seen anything like this where we're talking about sports entertainment, and every week I'm reporting on a new 100 million plus fund. Like, how much is there to invest in sports where you can generate a real return?
I actually don't think that all of these funds are going to make fund returning investments. I don't know how many there are, but also it seems, and maybe we're just like too in the space that we're not like seeing a broader picture, but it seems like there's so much capital coming in. And yes, of course, there's emerging leagues that are also rising, but it's still very early days. It's hard to say like where exactly the money is going to be made. I don't know if the right strategy is taking minority stakes in teams. It seems a pretty passive way, and
I think it's just already done so well by the biggest funds that
right.
It's like it's hard to compete with them, especially when valuations continue to rise, right? If I'm like, hey, I want to start a new fund where I buy minority stakes in all the biggest leagues, like, all right, you're probably going to need to raise like $2-3 billion in capital just to even compete, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, a tough angle. I think a lot of what these new funds are looking at is infrastructure, right? And I think these plays could be decent. I think a lot of them actually will perform very, very well. But the way that I relate this to is like, how everyone's saying an AI bubble, and then everyone downplays it because like AI is going to be the next big thing. The way I see it too is that sports entertainment is the obviously hedge against AI, because live experiences literally just cannot be replaced. And if that's the case, whether there's a bubble or not, it doesn't matter because it is the future, right? So I think what will happen is maybe some funds fail, maybe some funds succeed, but what we're going to see is a lot of wins and a lot of losses. But the loss is where you learn, right? It's like, okay, maybe this investment doesn't work for this sport right now, but maybe in a couple of years, it'll be ready. It's all about timing and just, trying it out and seeing what happens. And I think more and more capital being deployed in sports is overall always going to be a good thing for the industry.
Yeah. And one main focus that these funds are focused on now is emerging leagues. And that leads us to our next topic, the latest news on emerging leagues and teams. And without talking too much about this, we have to cover one of our favorite emerging leagues, Pro Padel League. They just announced a $15 million Series A last week, led by Charlotte Hornets co-chair and governor Rick Schnall. The round was also included previous investor Left Lane Capital, which are also here in New York City and we know well. They Left Lane previously led their $10 million seed round in 2025. So pretty quickly have proved scale and now are doubling down, which is awesome. So PPL, Pro Padel League, they're describing itself as a 10-team professional paddle league across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. We saw a lot of players were international. They weren't really domestic players, which I think this will grow, but there's a bunch of domestic audience will grow, but there's a bunch of international audience, which I think is super interesting. This race particularly is going towards team infrastructure, player development, and staging bigger PPL events across North America. So they have announced a 5-event 2026 season across the country. New York, July 9th to 12th. We got to be there.
Yeah.
Los Angeles, and they're and a few other places that they're rolling out as well.
I think Kyle is gonna toss us an invite, right? Whittingham Sports.
Shout out our boy Kyle from Whittingham Sports.
Yeah, we're now in the content game, as you can see. So we'll be getting some good content if we're at the Pro Paddle League City Cup Finals.
I agree, and I think from what I said earlier, it was a really exciting experience watching it live. I think that most people wouldn't think that when they think about paddle, but for some reason, it was super entertaining for us. So
yeah,
I think they actually have something here.
Yeah. So Pro Paddle League, I think that they have a very interesting tailwind that's happening here. And I was looking at the stat. It's pretty wild. So there's 35 million players across 110 plus countries globally. Clearly has an international presence. I remember when we were talking to Kyle, who's very much involved with Pro Paddle League right now with Whittingham Sports, his marketing agency. What he was mentioning to me is that a lot of the players are coming from Spain and also LATAM, right? There's not that much in the US. It's because there isn't much infrastructure for paddle courts. I don't know if you guys have seen or played paddle, right? These are massive courts. If you're actually watching it fully, it's like glass boxes.
Yeah.
People are running outside. It's like definitely like something that you just would ordinarily never see when you're just walking around a park. But there was fewer than 30 courts in the US in 2020. Now there's 1,000 today. So It's growing at a rapid pace. The USPA, so I believe the US Paddle Association, is projecting 20,000 courts and 15 million active US players by 2030. And I think there's kind of some tailwinds with pickleball being such a big thing that people are like, hey, like pickleball is like just not as active, but I don't want to get as far as tennis. So they're going into paddle instead. Also, look at the demographic of people who watch paddle, right? It tends to be leaning more wealthier, I believe, like much, richer audience. Yeah. I could see finance bros when they're getting to like the age of like the 40s, or early 40s, where they're like, you know what, like maybe I'm done with tennis, but I don't want to play pickleball. All of my counterparts are playing paddle, like it's time to lock in, get involved. So I think that there's a lot of tailwinds in the US. The one thing that I'm really curious about is what is Pro Paddle League going to do with getting people to watch it domestically, right? Like getting that press out there, right? Like there's a competitor with Premier Paddle that does it internationally. Pro Paddle League's differentiation is that it's a franchise-based model. So I'm really curious to see, now that they got $50 million in capital to spend, how they really just get everyone, like get paddle on everyone's mind.
So I'm really interested to see their influencer strategy. They're in New York and LA, arguably the two largest places with influencers.
Yeah.
How do you get them to come to the event? The pop-ups that they have are very high end. Like it's a very sophisticated setup. It looks super modern.
No, it was a premium experience when we went to.
Definitely
right?
a premium experience. So how do you get that integrated and like show others on social that? Because I think even the on-court performance is eye-catching and highlights will go viral. I think that's the case. I think that the sport will naturally catch wind, but how do you sell that experience around it? I think that's like what I would be thinking about. I'm sure the pro paddle folks are already thinking about it as well.
Yeah, maybe you get like some of the influencers in like the finance space, and you get them to just like
invite them to the kinda.
Yeah, honestly, us. Yeah, we'd be
I don't know if we're influencers. Yeah, but no, that would be awesome. And in other news in the emerging league space, we'll touch on this pretty quickly because we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but Synergy Sports Capital, Terrence Murphy and Reggie Bush's new $150 million sports fund acquires LOVB Salt Lake. So it's one of their first deals, I think, post-launch, and they're assuming operating rights over LOVB's Salt Lake team as a part of its team, or as part of its strategy to targeting emerging leagues and teams. The reason why I brought this up is that we predicted this. I think if you go back and watch the clip, I said you asked me, or we discussed what are the targets? What are the potential targets with a $150 million fund? You can't go after all these bigger marquee assets. And I said a LOVB, Pro Paddle League, these are the type of assets that I think might be interesting. And they actually pulled the trigger on it. So once again, we've been a genie in Oracle.
So why did you say that? Why did you say League One Volleyball specifically?
So League One Volleyball is catching steam. They also are one of these assets that they're the premier, one of the premier emerging league investment opportunities that happens. I think you can fit in that. I don't know for what price range they bought it for.
They didn't disclose it.
Right. So like, it just seems to be a very interesting. It seems to fit in that $150 million fund umbrella. But I think what's even more interesting is it's not just the pro team, right? It's also you're building we talked about. You mentioned this earlier today. The pipeline from youth to pro that LOVB has kind of dominated in volleyball, right? So you have LOVB's youth to pro system with youth to pro ecosystem with 75% national team athletes and 20% Olympians. There's also a rising interest in women's sports as a whole. It just makes sense. If I was targeting specific emerging leagues as well, if that was my thesis, LOVB would be one of the first things that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, and I think also is because now that they have acquired Salt Lake, right? I was reading something where they actually have access to now invest in League One volleyball, the league itself. Okay. So they get exposure into the league, right? There's so much capital that's already been put into League One volleyball, which makes it a slightly less riskier of investment than just like taking a crazy swing on one of these other emerging leagues that are popping up every single day. And so you get that spot, you get Salt Lake. What's interesting is maybe he's thinking about the adjacent infrastructure around volleyball. So now Synergy Sports Capital is deploying their fund into building out the youth centers in Salt Lake City and for volleyball specifically. Those are cash flow machines as well. And so building out the infrastructure in Salt Lake, he gets that opportunity with League One volleyball that you wouldn't get in investing in some of these other leagues.
Yeah, I agree. And it'll be interesting to see what other moves they make. Maybe they do pro paddle, right?
Maybe they do a pro paddle with franchise, and then they look at spending money on the courts and like building out the infrastructure. Obviously, they're in USL with Atletico Dallas. That was previous to their fund launch. Yep. So it'll be exciting to see what they end up investing in their portfolio and what they do with it, right? Like I want to see some infrastructure being built around it, some real estate being developed. That's Terrence's bag, and I want to see it happen.
Yep. Just like the Pleasant Rock folks. So
yeah,
it seems to be a pretty strong thesis and strategy that they could both employ. But not only did OpenAI make headlines in new media for acquiring TBPN this past week, they're also making waves in the sports space. So they did two interesting partnerships. The first deal is with the San Antonio Spurs. They launched Spurs AI Studio, a platform for AI-powered fan experiences with brand partners. I don't know if you saw this. They did a cool activation with the beverage brand Ultra and announced Ultra Arrivals, which is where fans can snap a photo of themselves when they're in the stadium, and they instantly generate a cinematic arrival video inspired by the walkout tunnels, the walkout that NBA players have in their tunnels. So I think it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
It's a pretty interesting fan engagement.
Fan experience, yeah. Like all the fans want to feel like the players.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, right? And like, let's try to use AI to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's just the first of many ways, right? I think it's just such a low-hanging fruit as well. It's like, oh, I get to feel like an NBA player in the tunnel walkout, and using AI, then you can keep continuing to do personalized stuff with AI. I think this is the first of many. Not only did they just do that, but I don't know if you saw this either, but the San Antonio Spurs also did another partnership with OpenAI where they launched the AI Academy, where they're doing events in San Antonio to help improve AI literacy, practical usage, and responsible adoption. This is cool. This is like for the community. It's not just making them, doing stuff around the fan as well. It's doing it for San Antonio.
And that's a partnership with OpenAI.
With OpenAI, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what OpenAI leadership has been saying. They've been saying, hey, look, like AI is getting a bad rep. What we need to do is improve literacy around AI so they understand what the real world implications are and how to use it effectively. And so I think sports is such an interesting distribution strategy.
Completely
for that,
agree.
Right? So it's like use sports and fans as a way to educate the mass community in different areas that might not be exposed much to AI than the coastal elites, right? You have like rural areas. You have a place like San Antonio where maybe the AI discourse isn't as intense as it is in New York City, SF, and LA, right? So I think that's a good distribution strategy, and the San Antonio Spurs are an interesting partner for that.
Completely agree and completely aligned here. I think OpenAI and Anthropic and these leading LLMs and AI companies should be using sports teams to reach demographics for AI literacy and help change the narrative a little bit in their branding. I don't know why they haven't done it in a broader scale, but it seems that it's starting off.
Also just puts them on the map. Like
100%.
Not that many people really know what Anthropic is.
Yeah, but then they see if they do a deal with an NBA team, it's like, oh, you kind of have some cultural coolness attached to them. You know?
Yeah, and the Spurs are a beloved organization. Like OpenAI, like they're making moves to improve the brand, you know? So it's good moves.
Kudos to the San Antonio Spurs for being one of the early NBA teams to adopt AI fully like that. And then the next thing, you have a lot of thoughts on this, but ticket marketplace giant SeatGeek launched an integration inside ChatGPT that lets users discover live events through natural language prompts instead of clicking through SeatGeek to complete a purchase. So basically, if I'm here in New York and I want to go to a Knicks game, I'm like, I want to go to a Knicks game. What are the best tickets to, this is my price range. Give me some options. And it pops it up. Is that how I'm thinking about it? Is that the correct way to think about it?
Yeah, so that's exactly the right way to think about it. I was reading a Sports Business Journal article. They were, I believe, interviewing executives at these major ticketing platforms. And one of their biggest concerns was that a lot of them, instead of going into the apps like SeatGeek or Ticketmaster or Vivid Seats, you know, any one of these platforms, what they're doing instead is they're going on ChatGPT. They're going on Gemini and they're saying, hey, like, please find me the cheapest tickets for XYZ game at this time. Right? And so it's popping up Ticketmaster, SeatGeek, all these spots. And now SeatGeek is honestly inherently competing with Ticketmaster just from search, right? And so what SeatGeek is doing is like, hey, let's end this entirely. Let's just team up with OpenAI. So that way, when people are searching for tickets, SeatGeek's the one that's popping up and I'm interacting with the SeatGeek interface. Yeah. I'm getting used to the product just through ChatGPT. Very smart. Now, when it comes to a purchase though, you have to go on SeatGeek. So when I see the ticket, I click on it, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm on the SeatGeek website, etc. What I think is the future is you're just buying the ticket straight from ChatGPT through an integration on SeatGeek, where you literally click it, and some AI agent goes and acquires that ticket, procures that ticket from you via SeatGeek's platform, and you never have to leave ChatGPT. That's the future of what they call agentic commerce. One of our best friends actually.
Shout out Evan.
Shout out Evan. He was, he's been raving about this for years, and it's now seems like it's going to come to fruition. And I'm glad that SeatGeek made that first move because as a ticketing platform, you have to do this. Otherwise, you're just losing out on opportunities where these potential new customers that would build a relationship with SeatGeek are now going through ChatGPT and finding Ticketmaster instead, right? Yeah. You don't want to be in that situation.
I think the next thing that OpenAI should do within sports, and then I think the next venture that OpenAI should do in sports should be with Fanatics. You can do this exact same thing, but with sports merchandise. Search up, I want a Tom Brady jersey from, his 2007 throwback, like Patriots jersey, alternative jersey. You can get that, right? Or you can get I want this piece of trading card or memorabilia or merchandise, and I think that's the next, if I'm OpenAI and I want to infiltrate sports a little bit further through agentic commerce, the next integration I think is Fanatics. And if I'm Fanatics, I'm also thinking about them. And I know we have a bunch of conversations we can talk about on how that might be net negative for
the teams and leagues. Yeah, we were talking about this, how that just adds another layer of data that teams and leagues may not have access to that their counterparties do.
We just wrote a piece on this 2 weeks ago that professional sports teams and leagues don't know who their fans are outside of maybe who's purchasing the ticket themselves. So there's a problem of the invisible fan. And now if you're creating another layer of abstraction between who the person is and then buying it, and maybe there's some rules and laws around how that data that OpenAI collects around these agentic commerce purchases can or cannot be transferred back to the true vendor, I think is a little weird, and it might adversely impact teams and leagues.
So I think the next step for teams and leagues is to really think about how can we work more with these foundational LLMs, because everyone always says it's like Fanatics knows more about fans than the broader sports ecosystem, right? But I think at some point in time, it's going to be one of these LLMs that are consistently collecting so much information from fans who are, asking about tickets, right? Asking about merchandise, asking about all these different things from a consumer lens about sports. And obviously like there's, privacy policy where like you're not allowed to share data, et cetera. But I think at some point in the future, there is going to be some form of partnership between an LLM and a sports team or a sports league where it's like, hey, look, like we need to, band together to figure out who our fans actually are. And you guys have the keys to the treasure chest.
Yeah.
So we got to work something out here.
I'm right aligned with you. I think there should be more integrations within the LLMs and these sports teams and organizations. But I want you to tell me this last thing. So you talked about this. I wrote this down in the intro. KSI streaming Dagenham and Redbridge games. They're a sixth league, sixth tier league.
Yeah, sixth tier
European football league.
European football league in the UK ecosystem. Okay, let's be real. No one's ever heard of them till KSI invested in them, and I mean that's just typically how it works, right?
Well,
even for us, because we're not like the biggest like European football fans that exist. But let's be real, like no one's.
So you made a TikTok about this, and it was cool that nobody else was talking about it, but you called it Dagenham.
Am I about to get exposed? Live here?
And you got eaten alive in the comments, which is telling you to pronounce it right, and it's called Dagenham, right?
Yeah, honestly, I've had this issue where like for some of these European names, I just like mess it up or botch it.
It's tough.
It's tough because sports is international, and sometimes you just get things wrong, right? And you just got to own it. But yeah, I called it Dagenham.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the TikTok had Dagenham. I said it like 15 times in the TikTok, and so all the comments were like, "Yo, like great video by the but by the way, like it's Dagenham." I'm like, okay, lesson learned. I'll make sure to not get it wrong, and get it right this time. But yeah, KSI he bought a minority stake in Dagenham and Redbridge, I believe, beginning of March, and this was a big deal because you're having one of the biggest YouTubers / streamers. I mean, he's everything. He's a musician. He's a boxer. I grew up watching him because he was playing a lot of FIFA videos, and I was in love with FIFA at the time as a middle schooler, and just an overall great entertainer. He's got 100 million followers plus across the world. Honestly, he is a global platform. And he bought a minority stake in a team. And what he said was, I'm going to be very operationally involved. And so what did that make me think? Oh, Ryan Reynolds.
Wrexham.
Yeah, exactly. Rob Mack, where they bought Wrexham and they were able to almost take him to the Premier League. They're very, very close now. And so what if we see the same model with KSI? One of KSI's original series was Road to Division 1. Okay, we play in FIFA, you start at Division 10, you climb up all the way to Division 1. And he now wants to replicate that in real life, which is
so
sick.
Cool.
And the first move he's made was streaming the game live. So I looked into this. The media rights deals are not lucrative at all for 6 division leagues, right? Like Division 6 or 6-tier leagues. So what's more important is getting exposure. They have a deal with DAZN, and DAZN has a strong relationship with KSI because they've done like boxing events together. KSI actually live streamed the game at Dagenham. He was at the game, live streaming, watching it in real time. We've been talking about how this should be more of a thing because speed should be live streaming games. You got to get the streamers involved because it's the reactions that count. And
you're tapping into completely different audiences, right? They would have probably not tuned in to the gate-kept and paywalled broadcast otherwise.
Like, I wouldn't have cared about a Dagenham game. I wouldn't even known that game was even happening.
You would still be calling it Dagenham.
Yeah, I would still be calling it Dagenham. And so the stream did absolute numbers. It had 344,000 views overall, which is insane for a stream. It was highly engaged. People are extremely hyped about it. Now there's a storyline that's being built about Dagenham. KSI was also giving more information about how does a 6-tier work. It's National League South, how he's trying to get them to National League, which is the 5th tier, what that road will look like, the people that he's been engaging with, right? Who's actually operating the team, the players as well. And it's essentially building this storyline and personalities for this club that you would never get anywhere else. And so that's what got me thinking more of these teams that are in, especially in European football, that are lower divisions, should start looking at streamers as potential investors or content creators.
Yeah, or streamers and content creators should be looking at them as potential acquisitions, right?
Yes, exactly. And like they're able to generate a lot of hype around it, and I think it's going to always boost valuation. Dagenham's valuation is probably already going up because now you're counting all these viewership numbers, and if you're able to scale it consistently, they're just a much more lucrative of an asset than any other team within their division.
Yeah. It's super exciting. I think we're both spot on that creators and influencers should be looking, that are interested in this European football ecosystem, should be looking at them as potential acquisitions to be value add and create value.
Your favorite guy's Jersey Bird on TikTok.
Yeah, and he did the model with I believe a Kenyan soccer team. I believe, right?
Yeah, Kenyan soccer team. Sixth division too, I think.
Sixth division, basically created a media flywheel by recording the behind the scenes of what it's like to own and manage a Kenyan football team. And he's been able to generate money and reinvested that money back into the team.
It's like fully cash flow positive.
It's incredible. But it's exciting to see what more can come from this. I think it was a really interesting week. Not as good as, or I guess not as heavy or long of a headline list than last week or the week prior, but once again, still a very long week in sports business.
Yeah, I feel like every week is action-packed in its own way. Different moves that are being made. I'm seeing a lot of trends evolve, especially with emerging leagues, streamers getting involved in the mix, the big leagues taking major swings on new investment initiatives, whether it's flag football or NBA Europe. And I'm just excited how this ecosystem continues to evolve. I mean, we're having fun with this. At some point in time, we go daily. Like, it'll be even more fun because we get to cover some topics that we didn't get to cover today.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, it's huge.
Signing off from the fourth quarter. Let's go.